The Beretta M9, officially the pistol, semi-automatic, 9mm, M9, is a 9A, 19mm Parabellum pistol adopted by the United States Armed Forces in 1985. It is essentially a military specification Beretta 92F, later known as the 92FS. The M9 won a competition in the 1980s to replace the M1911A1 as the primary sidearm of the U.S. military, beating many other contenders, and only narrowly defeating the SIG P226 for cost reasons. It officially entered service in 1990. Some other models have been adopted to a lesser extent, namely the M11 pistol, and other models remain in use in certain niches. The M9 was scheduled to be replaced under a United States Army program, the Future Handgun System, which was merged with the SOF Combat Pistol program to create the Joint Combat Pistol. The JCP was renamed Combat Pistol, and the number of pistols to be bought was drastically cut back. The Joint U.S. Army Air Force Modular Handgun System could select a commercial off-the-shelf handgun to replace the M9 pistol in fiscal year 2013 or 2014 if budget funds allow the implementation of the study. History. In the 1970s, every branch of the U.S. Armed Forces except the U.S. Air Force carried the .45 ACP M1911 pistol. USAF opted to use .38 special revolvers, which were also carried by some criminal investigation military police organizations, USAF strategic missile officer crews, and by military flight crew members across all the services when serving in combat zones or when engaged in nuclear weapons duties. The Department of Defense then decided to synchronize the weapons of all 5 branches of U.S. forces. The ground combat branches of the services found this decision highly contentious, but was meant to eliminate the need to buy replacements for worn-out M1911 frames and to establish a common NATO pistol round to simplify logistics in case of war with the Soviet Union and Europe. In 1979, the Joint Service Small Arms Program began searching for a replacement for the venerable M1911, and the 9x19 and Parabellum round was selected for compliance with the NATO Standardization Agreement. In 1980, the Beretta 92S1 design was chosen over entries from Colt, Smith & Wesson, Walther, the Star M28, and various Fabrique Nationale and Heckler & Koch models. The result, however, was challenged by the U.S. Army, and new tests were done by the Army. In 1984, the trials started again with updated entries from Smith & Wesson, Beretta, SIG Sauer, Heckler & Koch, Walther, Steyr, and Fabrique Nationale. Beretta won this competition, but there was a new trial, the XM10 competition, in 1988. This resulted in 2 different trials that were more limited but resulted in the Beretta being chosen, albeit with an updated design. Concurrent to the pistol selection process, beginning in 1979, the Bianchi International Holster Company began its development of a multi-function military holster to be ready for the issuance of a new pistol. This holster, designated the M12, was adopted simultaneously with the adoption of the Beretta 92F in 1985. According to current references, the holster system was designed by John Bianchi and Richard Nichols, and has served the U.S. Armed Forces well for decades. The Beretta 92 Fahrenheit survived exposure to temperatures from a 40 to 140 degree Fahrenheit, being soaked in salt water, being dropped repeatedly on concrete, and being buried in sand, mud and snow. Additionally, the 92F proved a MABF of 35,000 rounds. That number is often touted as the equivalent to 5 or 6 times the pistol's service life. While this is normally true in European militaries, armed forces of the United States normally subject sidearms to much more extensive use. The Iraq War, which featured frequent urban and room-to-room combat, has required American soldiers to rely more heavily on their pistols. Technology. The M9 is a short recoil, semi-automatic, single-action/double-action pistol which uses a 15-round staggered box magazine with a reversible magazine release button that can be positioned for either right or left-handed shooters. The M9 is used with a Bianchi M12 holster, though other holsters are often used. The specific modifications made from the Beretta 92 includes design of all the parts to make them 100% interchangeable to simplify maintenance for large government organizations. Modified the front of the trigger guard so that one could use finger support for easier aiming. Recurved the forward base of the grip to aid aiming. Hard-chromed the barrel bore to protect it from corrosion and to reduce wear. New surface coating on the slide called Bruneton, which allegedly provides better corrosion resistance than the previous plain blued finish. It also has an enlarged hammer pin that fits into a groove on the underside of the slide. The main purpose is to stop the slide from flying off the frame to the rear if it cracks. This was in response to reported defective slides during U.S. military testing. The M9 was updated to the M9A1 in 2006. It added among other things a Picatinny rail for the attachment of lights, lasers, and other accessories to the weapon. The M9A1 has more aggressive front and back strap checkering and a beveled magazine well for easier reloading of the weapon. M9A1 pistols are sold with physical vapor deposition coated magazines developed to better withstand the conditions in the sandy environments in Iraq and Afghanistan. The M9 features multiple internal safeties, including a firing pin block that prevents the firing pin from moving without the trigger being pulled, and a firing pin striker that rotates when the safety lever is engaged, preventing the firing pin from being hit even if the hammer falls. The M9 also has an ambidextrous external safety lever allowing both left and right-handed people to comfortably engage the safety mechanism. Controversy. Prior to its widespread adoption by the U.S. military, questions were raised in a 1987 General Accounting Office report after an incident where a slide failure on a Beretta 92 SB injured a Naval Special Warfare member, and two more failures were later observed in additional testing. These failures included both military and civilian Beretta models with very high round counts, and after investigation they were deemed the result of ammunition supplied by the U.S. Army which exceeded the recommended pressures specified by NATO but nonetheless provoked a modification in the M9 designed to prevent slide failure from causing injuries to the user. In December 2006, the Center for Naval Analyses released a report on U.S. small arms in combat. The CNA conducted surveys on 2,608 troops returning from combat in Iraq and Afghanistan over the past 12 months. Only troops who fired their weapons at enemy targets were allowed to participate. 161 troops were armed with M9 pistols, making up 6% of the survey. 58% of M9 users reported they were satisfied with the weapon, which was the lowest satisfaction rate in the survey. 48% of users were dissatisfied with the M9's ammunition. 64% were satisfied with handling qualities such as size and weight. M9 users had the lowest levels of satisfaction with weapon performance, including 76% with accuracy, 66% with range, and 88% with rate of fire. 48% of M9 users were dissatisfied with its ability to attach accessories. 26% of M9 users reported a stoppage, and 62% of those that experienced a stoppage said it had a small impact on their ability to clear the stoppage and re-engage their target. Only 45% of M9 users reported their weapon's magazine did not fail to feed completely. 83% did not need their pistols repaired while in theater. 46% were not confident in the M9's reliability, defined as level of soldier confidence their weapon will fire without malfunction, mainly due to difficulty of maintenance. 63% were confident in its durability, defined as level of soldier confidence their weapon will not break or need repair. The M9 had the lowest levels of soldier confidence in reliability and durability. 74% of M9 users offered recommendations for improvements. 26% of requests were for increased caliber or stopping power, with some specifically requesting returning to .45 ACP rounds. 20% of requests were for a new pistol. Other recommendations were for more durable magazines and better grips. In 2007, soldiers in the field had a lot of concerns with the M9, notably a lack of confidence in its stopping power resulting from the use of the 9mm ball round, a significant factor in military evaluations because the Hague Conventions prohibit use of expanding bullets in warfare. The U.S. military has been criticized for not purchasing magazines from Beretta. The military awarded a contract to Airtronic USA because the previous manufacturer, Checkmate Industries, was charging too much per magazine, though Checkmate magazines are still sometimes issued. Prior to Checkmate magazines being purchased, the military purchased magazines from the Italian firm Mech-Gar. Airtronic has stated that its M9 magazines will be made similar to Mech-Gar's because of reliability problems with Checkmate magazines. There were reported failures with the government-contracted 9mm magazines. After extensive testing and actual testimony given by the troops, it was concluded that the failures were caused by the heavy phosphate finish called for in the government contract, combined with the unique environmental conditions in Iraq. After corrections to the government-required specifications for the magazine finish, almost 2 million new magazines have been distributed without any further malfunctions. In the competition to find a new vendor, 3 finalists were chosen. These 3 were, Airtronic Services, Incorporated classified as a moderate risk, PHT Supply also classified as a moderate risk, and Checkmate Industries, Incorporated classified as a very low risk. Of the 3, Airtronic Services, Incorporated was chosen by their low bid of $22,471,600. Airtronic Services delivered the first 900,000 magazines with 0 failures while costing less than the previous supplier Checkmate Industries. Users. The M9 has been the standard sidearm of the United States Navy, United States Army and the United States Air Force since 1985, replacing the Colt M1911A1 in the Army and Navy and the Smith & Wesson .38 Special in the Air Force. The M9A1 is also seeing limited issue to the United States Marine Corps. A large number of M9S and M9A1S were ordered in 2006. During the 2009 SHOT Show, Beretta announced it had received a $220 million contract for the delivery of 450,000 M9S and M9A1S to the U.S. military, within 5 years. The Beretta M9 General Officers model is a special model issued to general officers in the Army and Air Force that replaced the special issue or IAM-15 General Officers pistol and Colt M1911A1 beginning in 1986. It is identical to the standard M9 sidearm, with standard brunette and polymer finish and black composite grips, except it has a GO prefix to its serial number range, starting with G0001. It comes with a metal belt buckle that comes in gold metal for Army generals and silver metal for Air Force generals. The Marine Corps Times reported plans in July 2007 for all officers below the rank of colonel and all SNCOs to be issued the M4 carbine instead of the M9. The new assignment policy will still assign M9S to Marine colonels and above and Navy petty officer first class and above. The United States Coast Guard has replaced most of its M9 pistols with the SIG P226 Dark, though some M9S remain in service with certain units. The M9 is issued to crew members on military Sea Life Command vessels. Beretta USA announced on September 30, 2011 that the U.S. Army's Foreign Military Sales Program has purchased an additional 15,778 Model 92 FS pistols for the Afghan military and other U.S. allies. The Model 92 FS is the non-U.S. military designation for the M9 pistol. In September 2012, Beretta USA announced that the U.S. Army had bought 100,000 M9 pistols and that the M9 would remain their sidearm for the next 5 years. Replacement. The U.S. Army and Air Force are seeking to replace their M9S through the Modular Handgun System program. The House Armed Services Committee wants to terminate the program in favor of upgrading the M9. Program officials say buying a new pistol is the better option due to advances in handgun designs, the difficulty in addressing all of the M9's issues, other pistols being less expensive to produce and maintain, and the low confidence soldiers have in the M9. A 3-year engineering, manufacturing, and development phase is to begin in early 2014. Commercial off-the-shelf pistols will be tested for capabilities such as accuracy, dispersion, compatibility, and corrosion resistance under extreme weather and extreme combat conditions. The pistol's service life is expected at 25,000 rounds. The M9 is required to fire 5,000 rounds, while data from Beretta shows the average reliability of the M9 pistol to be 17,500 rounds without a stoppage. Notes. References. External links: Official Beretta 92FS page, FAS article on M9, GAO report, pistol procurement, allegations on Army selection of Beretta 9mm as DoD standard sidearm, June 1986.